Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Inadequate Mother with me, Hayley Brown. Before I introduce my guest for this week, who I'm super excited to share with you our conversation. It was just beautiful. I really vibed with this mom. But I just want to give a shout out to the moms that are just juggling a million different hats and almost a million different identities. You know, your mom, but then you want this career, and then you've got to be friend, or you've got to be sister, or you've got to be daughter, and then I am trying to start this podcast and get it to a sustainable level where I can really put my all into it. I'm an interpreter. I would consider myself a content creator, but even like for that to come off my tongue, I've been creating content for 5 years, but it doesn't feel natural to say it because I just don't feel like I'm doing enough to call myself that. And I think that goes for a lot of women, that they're trying to be so many different things that you don't feel like you fully fit in the bill. So then you don't identify yourself as that thing. And this wonderful woman that I'm going to interview today, she's a comedian, she's a mom, she's a sign language interpreter as well. So we've really connected because she's very neurodiverse like me, eccentric, performative. And I'm just, when you're in my profession that's very niche, very small, and you're freelance, you do a lot of work on your own. I get booked and I might never see another interpreter for 2 months. It's very hard to find people that are like you in the profession. So I feel really happy to have been introduced to Siobhan, who also has done a podcast called the Following Through podcast. Yeah, she's just an incredibly funny woman that likes to talk frank and real about motherhood, and I really appreciated the conversation we have, and I actually enjoyed it so much. I know that there's editors done little work to edit it because it just flowed so beautifully, and I just can't wait to have her back on again, to be honest. But to welcome you to this week's episode, I hope you enjoy it. Welcome, Siobhan, to Inadequate Mother. We've been trying to get this in the diary for ages because we basically connected on social media, but we're both interpreters of British Sign Language. We're both quite eccentric moms. I think we're both kind of like can relate to that kind of eccentric, out there type of personality. And which I can't wait to talk to you about is you're a comedian. A full-blown working comedian. And
I mean, the money it's not my main source of income.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew you were going to do that because I used to do that.
Myself.
Yes, you were going to minimize yourself because I do that with like the influence of stuff like, oh yes, I get sent creams, but you know, I wouldn't dare.
Creams?
I get sent creams, but that's it.
Oh my God, you're a proper influencer.
It took me a long but do you know what? We can push be whatever you bloody want to be. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody that gets on stage after putting the kids down and is able to go and make a room full of people laugh, or even not laugh, just make jokes on a stage, babe, you're a comedian.
Do you know? Yeah, and actually, you know, I've been doing comedy for 13 years.
Wow.
And even then I was kind of calling myself a comedian, but I would be like, oh, I'm an interpreter and I do comedy. But it was really last year when I took part in a national competition and I got through to the final, and I was on this bill with like comedians who were doing like, you know, pro clubs, and I won.
Wow!
I won it.
I
won the award,
winning.
And I was like, "Oh my God!" And actually on stage when I took the I was so shocked to win. And on stage I actually said, "This is going to make me take myself more seriously as a comedian." So since then, I say I'm an interpreter and I'm a comedian, and I have been making odd bits of money from it. So sod it. Yes, I'm gonna. You're right. It's about what you call yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, money is not the definition of what our identity. It shouldn't even have any bloody say into how we identify ourselves, really, does it? Because at the end of the day, and I think as I've been speaking to a lot of mums as well, and I ask them, where's the area that you feel inadequate? And a lot of mums will say financially, because especially single mums, they will literally say, I just don't feel I'm adequate financially because I'm not making the same money as their dad, or I can't give them the same thing as this mom or that mom, or financially, oh, I'm less of a mom. So you're certainly not less of a comedian if you're not earning or earning. And we're not less of a mother if we're giving them lots of financial benefits or not.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
It's about what you do, isn't it? What you do with your time. And what I do with my time is for work. I do interpreting and I do comedy. But there is one thing you said, putting the kids down and then going out. That's very optimistic about my kids' bedtime.
Really?
Honestly. Oh, my kids' bedtimes are like, it takes all night. I'm lucky if they're down by 9:30. So those days are gone. Like,
is that just because you're like catching so much joke? Because I can imagine you being a bit of a comedian mom, it would just be quite entertaining. Is it entertaining or distressing?
They're just not tired half the time. But I'm really happy because last night, so I had 2 gigs done this week that went well, but the biggest gig of all last night, solo bedtime, which I appreciate for yourself as a single mother must sound really pathetic, but I'm very much like rely on my husband to do a lot, and I'm out more than him because of the comedy. But he was out last night, a well-deserved celebration. And I did bedtime on my own, and there were no tears, and there was no shouting, and there were no meltdowns from any of us. So
bless you.
Honestly, it takes forever. Their bedtime is so stressful. It's the lying down bit. It's the lie down now, be quiet now. That's the bit that takes an hour.
Because they've just got so much energy and personality, and they don't switch off easily. And you might hate it now, and you might be like, God, just be still and be quiet. But when that's their character. That's they're not going to be just wallflowers. They're going to be fiery like their mom, and you wouldn't change it for the world. But yeah, it's tiring as hell.
It is. But you're right, I will miss it. And now my son is 7. And, they want us to stay with them while they go to sleep. And that's something we meant to, we did teach them to self-settle and all that stuff when they were babies, but they've unlearned it. And we've given in. And I have them next to me. I'm giving them foot massages, back rubs, and then they'll go to sleep. And then in the middle of the night, one of them will come in with me. I'll either get a 7-year-old boy or a 4-year-old girl coming into my bed. And actually, now that my boy is 7, I realise he's growing, and actually those days won't last, will they? You're at the other end of it, Hayley, aren't you?
I am, and you know what? I look back now, and again, like my kids are amazing, and like everyone, we have our problems, and my daughter's like having a little bit of a journey now where she's deciding where to go to uni. She cannot make her mind up of what she wants to study and stuff like that. So there's bumps always, but to look at them, I'm like, Hayley, you've done a really good job. But then it's funny because the information changes constantly. I don't know if you listen to the Diary of the CEO podcast. I recently listened to an episode, and it was about childcare, and the doctor was basically presenting all this research and how it's really important to be close to your kids, like stay with them and sleep with them. Whereas I, 18 years ago, was under the impression that independence as much as possible, breaking the hand, making sure they self-soothe, being away from them, making them strong and resilient. And she's basically, I listened to it, and my heart just sank, because she was basically saying how this is the reason why we're all struggling with our mental health, that we're too far. Have a listen to it, because sometimes I listen to these people, these experts, and I'm just like, yeah, you haven't got kids and you don't know.
Yeah.
But she's basically just calling out society and saying we're operating in a way that's making us long-term mentally unstable because we're so far away from our parents and stuff. And it horrified me, because my kids were always, on their own, and not on their own, but staying at grandmother's, or so it is. You never know what's right. You really don't.
There's too much out there. So saying you listed, I was listening to the gentle parenting stuff whenever I've been having really difficult time, and it just made me a bit annoyed, because I was like, it's so unpracticable. Don't get me wrong, there might be a lot of people who can practice it really well, and I'm happy for you. But I can't do it. It just made me listening to these theories and these podcasts about parenting just made me doubt myself, and then it actually made me really unconfident with my approach to my kids. And a lot of the time, you've just got to do what's in your instinct. So I always co-slept, because it was easiest for me, I'll be honest. I got the most sleep and it was great. But
Yeah.
actually, that all the ideas out there, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's all like, I love your podcast. I love this whole inadequate mother concept, because inadequacy is such a big theme through all our lives, isn't it? And
It
it's so
is.
easy to feel inadequate, particularly as a mother. And all the information that what we're grappling with in this age of parenting is all the information out there. There's so much information that we're taking it all in, but each one of it contradicts itself,
Oh,
and you're going to
yeah.
end up feeling inadequate. So, like,
Yeah.
what you did was fine, Hayley. And what blows my mind about you is you had your first baby at 20, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like,
I've always been mum.
Yeah,
But I think that's easier. I think that's easier
Really?
because I look at my friends, and they're having to adapt their life in such a way. Whereas me, it's always been second nature. I never wasn't mum. I was even a little bit of a parent to my parents because they were a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. So I was always taking care of people. So I don't know any different. So when I look at my friends that are like 30, 40 having kids, and they're going through these huge adjustments, I'm like, you poor sod. Like, I've never had a clean house, so I don't get anxiety about a house being messy, because it's just, I don't know any different.
And you never had any freedom anyway. Like 20s, when, like, honestly, I don't think I was a grown up at 20. I wasn't even a grown up at 30. I'm struggling to be a grown up at 40.
This week's episode, actually, for Mother's Day, I'm interviewing a young girl, 20. She's had 2 kids back to back. And she set up a podcast called Diary of a Young Mum, and she's just having young mums come in. And I'm like, and I know her, I know her dad. So I was like, I've got to have her on for Mother's Day, because it's definitely the area where I felt inadequate. And she's just having that open conversation with young mums. And so that's a really lovely conversation.
You were saying that the advice you had was different. So you would have been parenting, 2000 and my maths is 2005, 2006. My God, I was 21. Just drinking and shagging. It was great.
I did a bit of that as well.
You did good, as long as you fit some of that in.
I did.
But the advice would have been different. There wouldn't have been all the information. Like there wasn't social media. It wasn't really social media yet.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think and having my mom was just falling apart. She was an alcoholic, and I lost her when my daughter was about 4 or 5. She died of alcoholism and almost died really of motherhood. If I look at it bigger.
Oh, that's
yeah. And when I say that, let me just retract that.
You did not kill your mother. Let's clarify this.
No,
you did not.
Let me just retract that. What I'm saying is, the difficulties surrounding motherhood and the inability to talk. Like, if my mum was here today and there was social media and there was people out there going this and this and that's hard and this hard, and mental health and everything was talked about in the way it is now, I know my mum would have been alive. She was a crazy, eccentric fashion designer. She loved life. She had loads of friends. She was just this person, but she just carried all this shame. So it's the shame that I think is really important to get rid of, and just be like, and I've felt it, like, I think more in my kids' teenage years, where it really hit the fan. Yeah, because there's a lot of power dynamics involved with teenage girls and young mums. We're both very strong-headed, and the arguments got really bad that I had to just hold my hands up and go, I am failing here. I am not equipped for this. Yeah, but it's okay, because everybody is. And this is when people go, oh no, babes, everybody's going to have these.
I've had that this week. I had a bedtime on Tuesday where I ran out screaming, and I was like, let's take over. And then I shouted and I said something really out of order, and I made my son cry, and I had to apologise. And it was like, it was horrible, Hayley. And I've had several moments like that where I can't do this. And it's
you get triggered.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to realise I get triggered more, and I think everyone talking about ADHD and things like that.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a bit on stage, because I was statemented as a child, because I have an identical twin, and she was sort of functioning quite normally. My parents had an older daughter already, and they were like, this one is not really doing much. She's not speaking. She's walking funny. What's she doing? And I was basically a massive weirdo. So my mum was like, I was a massive weirdo. I got referred for all sorts of stuff. I had speech therapy. In fact, I had speech therapy because I didn't say anything until
But
any
now
of the
you're on
sessions.
stage
I know. Now
doing
I can't stop
comedy.
talking. No, well, the
It's
last ever speech
brilliant.
therapy session, I hadn't said anything throughout all the sessions. And the last session, I was age 5. I come out with a load of swear words. Whoopsie. My
I
poor
love that.
parents. But they said there was a child psychologist that said I had autistic tendencies, and it turned out to be a spelling error. And then they were like, no. Another one said it's artistic tendencies.
What's that? They've got labels for everything, haven't they?
I know, but eventually, so I had support throughout school. I had extra time in exams, but I never got an actual diagnosis of anything. So when I have a bit on stage where I actually get the audience to diagnose me, and all of them say ADHD,
I
I
love
probably have to
that.
actually because I know I have something because I had a statement through school. I had extra time, and it was amazing that my parents were able to fight and get me that. But I just don't know what I have. I know I have a neurodiversity, but I don't have a clue what it is. Dyspraxia, ADHD, my money's on that, to be honest.
I love that you ask the audience. Like with my Instagram, when I've Instagram vlogged for 5 years, so every morning I've said good morning to whoever's watching, and all my cupboard doors have always been open. I've always been doing it, and so many people go, Hayley, you've got ADHD, and I used to ignore it. I'd be like, whatever. You see 1%, you don't see anything, you don't know. And then as the years have gone on, I can feel, we're talking about these perimenopausal symptoms bringing everything to the surface more.
No,
my kids,
stop with the perimenopausal. I don't like you saying it because you're younger than me. And if you're perimenopausal, that means I'm perimenopausal.
We all are. Listen, we're all just...
Hayley.
We can. We're all growing. Women are constantly changing from the day we were born. So we're doing it every day. But yeah, I'm just... starting to think a lot more. And I think with you having your parents identify things like that, I never had that. I never had parents that had any time to even kind of acknowledge anything about what was going on with me, in terms of, as long as I was fed, I was watered, that was it. So I'm really reflecting on how I was as a kid. And it's a long time ago, so it takes some thinking about. But anyway, in terms of, I love the fact that we're talking about like how just putting aside those inadequate feelings and imposter syndrome and everything to be able to, live out your passions and do comedy. But we can also relate to how that kind of comes out in our jobs as an interpreter, because that's that's another massive area where there's so much insecurity within our profession.
Oh my God.
It's really, it's insane.
Yeah.
And I think with this, accepting your inadequacies as a mom allows you to lean into them and kind of deal with them a bit better.
Yeah.
I've realised that with interpreting. So I became a better interpreter when I went, I'm really shit at this, or I might not be, and I just basically was like, sorry, I'm a trainee, and I'm not that good. And I kind of almost outed myself, and it allowed me to have that freedom and capacity to process the information. Because if you're using up brain power to think about how you're doing things wrong, you are literally robbing the energy and the cognitive ability to do the job in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really,
interpreting is such a hard journey. I know I'm going to get you on my podcast to talk about how we become interpreters, which is going to be very exciting. But I don't know about you, but for me, it was 10 years from the age of 17 to 27. And then I became an interpreter. But throughout that time, I was always like, this is a great sign. I don't know if those who are listening, it's a letter C it's like a hand shape like a letter C. It's on your chest and it goes up and down, depending how confident you are. And honestly, my confidence when I was sort of, becoming an interpreter was always down there. And even now, I don't put myself up on platforms and do all that signing because I don't generally feel that that's where I'm most comfortable. I'm actually more comfortable just interpreting one-on-one with people or in groups that I'm comfortable with. But honestly, I remember going to Deaf Pub when I was 22 and I just moved to London from Reading. And I turned up there and I got really scared. I couldn't pluck up the courage to talk to anyone, so I left. And that has never, ever happened. I always can talk to people in a pub, but I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And it just, because I just felt like,
Mm.
my wobbly legs, really scared. I couldn't do it. And yeah, the confidence you get as an interpreter and the attacks of confidence there are so hard. They're actually far more than I ever get in comedy. Don't get me wrong, I get scared in comedy, particularly now I'm getting bigger gigs. I do get the odd gig where I'm like, oh God, okay. Or if I get a pro gig, or like the other week I was on stage with Joel Dommett from The Masked Singer, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a big deal. He's watching me. But I didn't get anywhere near as scared as I did when I was first starting out as an interpreter. Because actually, at the end of the day, if I don't make people laugh, okay, yeah, it's a shame and it does affect me, but it's just my ego it affects. It's not going to affect anyone else in the long run. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's where the insecurities, stem from, is the fact that if you're bad, it affects someone's access, which then affects their life. So it is a huge responsibility, and that is drummed into you as an interpreter. And generally, you only really go into that job if you care a lot about other people. So if you just didn't care about people, you'd be like, oh, whatever, then it'd probably be a lot easier. But because you are someone that cares, it is hard, but it does need to be talked about more so that people can progress, because we are losing interpreters. And
are we?
Yeah, well, I don't know about losing, sorry. We've not got enough.
Well, interpreters burn out, I think, and that's why it's great to have something else going on. And actually, on my interpreter course, I did the SLI, PG Dip, and PLJ was the teacher, and he actually said it was quite common for interpreters to have an extra thing going on, because being so focused on interpreting can really burn you out. And when I qualified, I had sort of been focusing so hard on sign language and becoming fluent and becoming interpreter that I had neglected the performer in me. And I'd done the band. I used to sing in a band with my dad, and that was lovely. But I hadn't done stand up. And I thought to myself, when I actually got the badge and I was like fully qualified, I thought, well, January 2012, why don't I try stand-up comedy? Let's give that a go, because people had always said to me, oh, you should have a go at stand-up comedy. They hadn't signed. Why am I signing? Interpreters do this, don't they? They just start signing to each other. This is what we do. So that's why. And I thought, because as an interpreter, you're always kind of, it's lovely in the sense that you can really go make yourself quite small, and you're echoing other people's words, but you're not necessarily shouting out your own. So I thought, well, what's going to be healthy for me is to do that during the day, and then at night time get on a stage and be like, rah, hello, I'm here, look at me. And that's been quite a nice balance for me, I think, through the years. They go nicely.
Yeah, I really love that, because I can massively relate to the torn feeling of being. I remember being in the one of my lectures at uni when I decided to be an interpreter, and first of all, he told me that he was telling everyone that we all had to wear black, and I'm a big fashionista girl, so I was just like, oh shit.
Was this at Wolverhampton? Did you do the course at Wolverhampton?
Yeah, Wolverhampton. The degree? Yeah.
And you must have already had your kids by then. How on earth did you do that?
I don't know. It's another story, but
that's another story. You can tell it on my podcast. Yeah, you were literally going to discuss that. Sorry.
I know, it's mental. Like I do recommend it though. Going to uni when you're a young mom definitely helped in some ways. But yeah, I just remember being there thinking, have I made the right choice? Is this really me? Because he's telling me I need to be invisible. I need to be not seen. I need to make myself, facilitate the communication of the deaf community and put the spotlight on there and just be completely backseat unseen. And I was like, that's amazing. Like the aim of that is what I'm all about. I love that. But me as a person, like, is that going to suit me? So I really it was like a torn version of me. You're like, oh, I want to do this, but but
it's also not necessary, because then the new theories come out and say you don't have to be totally out. It's actually better. You don't have to be a robot. It's better to be human in these interactions, and that's how you make it not weird. So if everyone's going around and introducing themselves in a meeting, if you just go, no, I'm the interpreter, I can't talk, that's weird. You make it weird.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, if you say, "Oh, my name's Siobhan, I'm an interpreter today," fine. But but it depends on the situation. So Robert Lee and PLJ theory of role space, how actually your sense of self your sense of self fluctuates depending on the setting. So formal
Yes.
settings like a conference, of course, it's going to be very, very small. You're really
Mm-hmm.
there just to do the information, or even in a court, really not appropriate to make it all about you. But then let's say access to work situation, you're with a colleague. I mean, my clients, we're colleagues and we have a great relationship. And I often have people asking me about boundaries. Interpreters can get a bit obsessed about boundaries, can't they? They get all in a flap about it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
people are
I'm
worried about, you're a
constantly.
comedian and you're an interpreter, but boundaries. It's like, no, I'm not going to start telling knob jokes at work because I'm not a twat. Let's be realistic here. Unless I'm in the office with a client and they want to tell me a knob joke, in which case we're both grown-ups.
Yeah.
We will tell a knob joke and it's fine, and then we'll get back to work. It's like we're grown-ups here, and
The concept of professionalism. The concept of professionalism changes, and I think in this digital revolution, the biggest changes are happening in society, and the concept of professionalism is just one of them. And that the interpreting industry is playing catch up with that, and I think with the deaf community sometimes it's because of the language barriers that exist within the sign language community. It's almost like a bit of a delay in that catch-up. Over COVID and lockdown, I really saw massive changes because all of a sudden we had to have the contact details of all our deaf clients. We had to do those FaceTime remote jobs, and we had to communicate directly with clients rather than through the agency. And I think it's through that moment that pulling of my interpreter self and me as a let's call it content creator, which I'd done before I was an interpreter. I've always been a content creator before I was interpreting. It's always been part of me. So that kind of tour, and I just thought, fuck it. Like in lockdown, I was like, fuck this. The world's gone mad. the deaf community are isolated. No one's thinking about anyone. Like we're all lonely and we're all using social media. So fuck it. I'm just boundaries or no boundaries. And I always find it bizarre when they're like that you could rock up. Like I know that if I rock up to an appointment and that client's followed me, I know they know so much about me. But realistically, we know so much about them. We're privy to so much information. They have to share so much of their private lives.
So maybe that sharing is appreciated, and it's a trust that obviously you would never break. You don't break confidentiality. You don't obviously anything that happens at work you don't talk about. Ever, because it's code of ethics. You just don't. That's interesting. So it's just being human, isn't it? It's the hearings that get all worked up about the boundaries and can you share this? But actually, I think deaf people generally like you to be real and human. Because they're just I love the deaf community.
Yeah, I do. I understand why the importance of it, the professionalism's there, because we've had to fight. We've had to fight to have it standardized as an actual profession to be taken seriously. And in order for a profession to be taken seriously, you got to act a bit professional.
And we do. We're not getting cancelled here because we don't want to say that we are not professional. We are professionals. You adapt to the setting.
We're just a bit quirky.
But we're not going to do that if we're interpreting in a formal place. I'm a
good interpreter, and I am just at a stage in my life where I am getting enough clients. I know I'm going to always have enough clients, and I just feel I'm more and more confident to be myself because of that. And I think for any trainees or people that are listening that are thinking about becoming an interpreter, your time will come when you just feel like you can be more and more yourself and more relaxed. And sometimes, and this is one of the things that always saved me as well, because I feel like a lot of interpreters are going to listen to this episode, is the amount of times I heard that a deaf person would prefer to have an interpreter that had a really good attitude.
Yes.
And rather than be shit hot at signing, they would
because you get these interpreters that are incredible signers and interpret things in such a way that's so skilled, but just has a really shit attitude.
Yeah. And
Deaf people don't want that.
If there's a delayed payment and you're like, the first day it's late, boom, boom, email, payment. Come on. Deaf people have so much to worry about with access to work paperwork. It's like an extra job sorting all that out. And
that's a whole conversation. That
is a whole conversation. But actually, it's like, you know what? No, be a bit flexible. Be a bit like, just be nice. And that's what I found. I've been nice. I found my clients. Attitude is really important, and being and the sort of the right social dynamics. It's important to manage those. I always thought when I was training to be an interpreter, I realized that we also have to be like social engineers.
Yeah,
you're managing the vibes. Yes, it's good, isn't it? Yeah. It's all clever.
Is that what you do on stage? Do you like engineer the audience?
Yeah. Yes, I suppose I do, and especially as an MC, because I MC a lot. So what I do before I MC a show is I meet the audience. Like I have a heckle show. Do you know what heckling is, Hayley?
Is it when they kind of like shout or
when the audience shout at the comedians?
Shouts, yeah. But they also don't like that, do they? Because I've been to a few comedy shows recently, and it can be really distracting when audience members are just shouting nonsense or are really drunk. And they can
I love it.
Do you?
I prefer it.
Well, I could tell these comedians getting really annoyed or getting thrown off, or like they were like building up to the pun of a joke, and then someone would shout something and just completely ruin the delivery. So like how do you manage that? How do you engineer that?
To be honest, it's great because actually audiences love spontaneous things. So they love anything that's unscripted. They go nuts for it because it's in the room. And this is one thing that's similar to interpreting. It's important to be in the room and look around you, make a comment about something that's happened earlier on in the show, make a comment about an audience member who you know a bit about. Anything you say that is not part of your script, they always love. And it doesn't even have to be funny. I mean, to be fair, I've done it several times where it hasn't been funny, but it's fine. Everyone appreciates it. And actually, if you get a heckle, really whatever you come back with is fine. They always appreciate it. However, it is a bit like, when you have an argument with someone and they say something and then you can't think of anything, or you say something and then you go home and you go, I wish I'd said that. It's a bit like that with heckles. I go, but then that helps you because you write that down and you remember it for next time. You make material out of it. But I host a night in Rains Park in London and one in Wandsworth where you are meant to heckle, where I encourage the audience to heckle. And I encourage them to heckle verbally and visually. So I give out cards for them to hold up saying things like, careful now, that's getting a bit edgy, or that's a nice perfume, can I sniff you? Or can you advise me the best way to get to Reading whilst avoiding the M25? Really silly things. And the audience just hold up these cards and the comedians have to respond to it. It's great. The comedians hate it.
That's really that's really creative.
It is great. I'm happy with the format. It's fun. It's really good fun. It's mental.
What do you think of because this was an interesting topic of conversation on my Instagram a couple of years ago. I was doing Richard Blackwood. He was a host, an emergency last minute replacement host for an awards event, and he'd been given like this script. It was like, this is it was the MBCC award. So Richard Blackwood was just, his jokes were just not landing well in the room. He wasn't reading the audience. He made something a joke about neurodiversity not being a thing. That was his opening line, and then and it was a room full of like disabled and neurodiverse people, and it was just like, but then he started on at me, the interpreter, and Lenny Henry's done it as well.
You were interpreting it.
So I was interpreting. Yeah, it was. But he just massively distracted me. He was basically coming at me and telling me, you're not, because I'm Jamaican. I am mixed race. I don't look it. I don't present to be Jamaican. So and this award ceremony was predominantly brown faces. So he was making a joke about the fact that, am I going to understand the room, the demographic? And I was just massively triggered because
you're mixed race.
Well, because I'm constantly having to justify my heritage and my cultural capacity kind of thing. And I'm like,
that's so interesting.
And then he was like jibing at me. He was like, what's the sign for rotted? And obviously when a comedian does that and plays with the interpreter, which they do a lot, you then break connection with the audience, and it's almost like they're interfering with the access that the deaf audience has. Whereas some deaf people like it, and then some don't realise it's very hard to be interpreting for them what's happening whilst trying to respond to the comedian.
Yeah.
So I just wondered your thoughts.
Well, I would say, yes, that's terrible. But there was a time I ran a deaf and hearing show in London, and I had an interpreter called Daniel Roberts interpreting. He did it voluntary, bless him, because there was no budget, because there's no money in comedy. And we did dry hump each other on stage.
But that's different,
We
because
literally just dry humped each other, and the deaf people loved it. And I fucked with him so much. And another time, Dee Simpson, I interpreted a show last year, and she came on. And because there were deaf people in the audience, I started using SSE, and I was signing. So she got a beer, opened it, sat down, had a drink. And that was brilliant. And then we really kind of played with each other and worked together. So that works. I think Adam Hills does it brilliantly. His whole thing is that he uses the interpreter and brings them in. So I think it can work really well. It's just that Richard Blackwood just didn't do it well. He alienated you, making the comment about race. That is so interesting, Hayley, as well, because that is, you must always have to justify yourself.
I wrote an article in Asley about it.
Did you?
I did. I did a
Let's have a look at that. 'Cause I've got mixed race kids, so it's really interesting to hear that. And my twin sister has mixed race kids, also half Ghanaian, and we're English and Irish. And actually, it's interesting because mixed race children, then their children might not necessarily look black. So I've noticed that with a few mixed race people who have kids, and then that does present a real a challenge, doesn't it?
I recommend a book called Both Not Half by Jessa Alawalia. He's half he speaks fluent Pakistani, but he looks like a blonde English boy. He's basically written this book where he's kind of challenging our concepts of what mixed race looks like, by even the fact that we use maths, like I'm quarter, you're half, like it doesn't even make sense. It's not, how can you use maths to describe your cultural identity? It doesn't even make sense why we do that. And he was basically written this book to say, you can be both of these two things. You don't have to be half and half, because that just leaves you feeling incomplete, and it leaves you feeling on the fence, like you're not fully that or you're not fully that. And actually what we need to do is just think about, I'm fully this and I'm fully, a little bit like what we are doing with our careers as well, like I'm comedian, a little bit of no, you can be fully of everything.
I'm every woman, it's all in me. But the interesting about identity, a bit of Whitney. My husband's Chinese, right? He's full Chinese in terms of both his parents are Chinese, but he's English. He's always felt English. And he would have that thing growing up, because actually it shouldn't be about where your blood comes from. He also feels partly Dutch because his dad grew up in Holland, but is Chinese. So my kids also have hot Dutch in their identity, even though there's no Dutch blood. They just have family in Holland and would go there a lot. I always felt like I resonated stronger with my Irish side, because you know what the Irish are like. There's loads of us. My mum was one of 7. Got this big, all-encompassing, fantastic Irish family. So I really, and obviously I've got an Irish first name, which is very important to me, hence why my kids have Irish first names as well. It's a beautiful thing what your identity is, and it's all about how you feel.
It's how you feel, who you interact with, how you're brought up. And you said then blood, and I remember thinking as a child, my blood's half this, my half that. I think there's been a lot of research recently about how actually biologically we're all very similar, and there's no kind of cultural blood that exists, like you're gonna have basically you cut us all open, we're all the same. It's about like how you're raised, your culture,
and what you want to celebrate about your culture and your heritage. And it's great. Like, I couldn't move out of London having mixed race kids. I couldn't go back to, I grew up in quite a white village in Guildford, near Guildford, and I once said to my husband, would we ever move back there? And he's like, God no, it's racist. He hates it. And it's like, you know what, speaking to my twin, I was like, we couldn't. You couldn't, because actually growing up here was so diverse. Everyone's got all sorts of different nationalities and everyone celebrates it. And it's a fabulous thing.
Yeah. And I think for me as, and this might be, obviously it won't be the same for you, but having mixed race kids, I had to really accept that their mixed race and my mixed race was different. Whereas I didn't want to accept that, because it's about, to me, I look at them and they're the same. They're me. They're my children. And you probably look at your kids and be like, they're me. They're the same. But
they're too much of me. They'd be easier to manage if they were less me.
But then there's some point you have to accept and go, it's how the world sees them, and they see them as black and me as white. And as much as we are the same, we have to. I was massively in denial, and it was through interpreting and all that journey with interpreting is why I wrote the article that I
Did Richard Blackwood influence it?
Just kind of that acceptance that at some point you have to acknowledge how the world sees you, and it shouldn't be like that, but and you've just started a podcast as well, haven't you? Or not just started, it's been going a while. How long is it going?
January. So what's really exciting is because I started it, and a deaf lady called Lucy Jones, maybe she's watching, she messaged me to say, you need to contact Hayley Brown. She's an interpreter and a podcaster. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I might do that. Then I work with the lovely Petra. And I tell her, I've got a podcast. It's all about pooing yourself. And she's like, you need to contact Hayley Brown, not because of the poo, not because you're famous for pooing yourself, Hayley. I don't know if you are.
I need you to explain this concept because I've had to explain my concept of why is it called inadequate mother. Please explain to me, what's it called? Follow through.
It's called.
Where did the creative concepts come from in terms of follow through?
So it's called the Following Through podcast.
Oh, the Following Through.
And I'd love to take credit for it, but it's actually my co-host, a guy called Alex Love. He's a comedian who, over the years, I would get him. I used to run variety shows at a pub called Dirty Dick's in Liverpool Street. They were really mental, and I was like not long into comedy, and I was a bit off my head with grief because I'd not long lost my father, so I was all over the place, and I put all my energy into these crazy shows. And I did a 90s show, and I wanted someone to come on as the 90s and do a Q&A dressed as the 90s. And I was looking for people, and I got Alex to do it. Alex agreed to do it, and he come on and he was dressed as the 90s, and the audience just asked him questions as if he were the decade, the 90s, and he answered them. So then I was like, okay, what are you going to do next month? Why don't you be the British seaside? Okay, what should we do next? I got him to do a different character. We did a biblical show. He was God. And then I was about to get married, so I did a big variety hen party. It was a unisex hen party. So my husband was there as well. And I got Alex to dress up as a giant inflatable penis. So he was answering questions dressed as a penis. And we really enjoyed working together then. So he kept being like, over the years, shall we run a show? Shall we set up something? But at this point I was having babies. So I was like not very creative, not very up for it. And then he heard me guest on a podcast and he said, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. But then, as you are as a mum, you just carry on. Okay, I'm gigging, I'm working, I'm folding laundry, I'm doing all that shit. And then eventually I get a load of texts saying, right, these are the concepts for the podcast. He sent me loads, but the first one said, Following Through, a podcast about overcoming challenges in trying circumstances, plus stories about shitting yourself. And I was like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. That's the one we're going to do, Alex. Come on. Next thing I know, he's got a logo involving like poo and a microphone and a theme tune. He's got his friend to compose a theme tune. So we start. So, I'd love to take the credit. You've done all yours. You've set it all up yourself. Alex kind of did the legwork for us. And now I'm doing it. I am on it. I'm writing. I'm, getting guests on, and I'm pulling my weight. But I really have to. It's he came up with the idea, and it's been great actually because we talk about a topic. either just the two of us, or we get a guest on who talks about something that they've followed through with. So we had one guest who was a comedian who retrained to become a doctor. We had another comedian on who's got Crohn's disease. So she talked a lot about that, which is fantastic. And we've also talked about things like learning to drive. So following through with that, we're going to get you on, Hayley, to talk about becoming an interpreter. That's going to be very exciting because we're going to book interpreters for that as well. And even just like we've just had 2 sessions where we talk about social media, which I don't know if you've listened to them yet, but I think you'll find them interesting because I mentioned you because you have some great ideas on social media that I brought into the discussion.
About validation.
About validation fascinates me. I loved it. So we have that section, and then we have a section called shit or miss. Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
You are. Go for it.
Okay, that's good. And the shit or miss section is where somebody explains. They tell the story of whether they pooed themselves, but they stop before they get to the pinnacle, and you ask the other guests, what do you think happened? Was it a shit? Was it a miss? And everyone speculates as to what happened, and then we reveal the truth. Quite puerile, but it's great because everybody poos.
Yeah, but not like so do you mean like poo in the toilet or poo themselves?
So this is this is a controversial discussion that has come up in the podcast because we got to episode 9 and we realized that Alex and I actually have different definitions of what shitting yourself is. So he thinks it only counts if it's in your pants. And he's had several stories. So I'll be
that just really tickled me.
Good. I'm glad. Don't put yourself.
No, it's just like the way you seriously went, well, actually.
I know we do. It's controversial. He thinks it only counts. It only counts if the shit goes in your pants or your trousers. And I think it's shitting yourself if it's in a bush or if it's on a bus or if it's on the floor. And
what about a toilet?
No, if you reach the toilet, it's a miss. I think if you shit anywhere that isn't a toilet, that's shitting yourself. But Alex disagrees. He's like, gotta be in the pants, gotta be in the pants, gotta be on the trousers, or it's not shitting yourself.
I don't think I've only shit myself when I was giving birth. I think that's the only time.
You can talk about that on my podcast.
Well, I went to see a comedian this week.
Oh, did you?
Tired and Tested. You've got to. So you would love her set. Honestly, she's touring at the moment, and she started off on Instagram. She was just doing lockdown videos on Instagram, and she didn't step foot on stage until the age of 38, and she's now 40, and it's incredible. Like her delivery.
Hang on a minute, 2 years, and she's doing a tour.
2 years.
I've been plugging away. I'm doing basements to one man and his dog. What am I doing wrong here?
Honestly, it's the social media. She found herself and she absolutely smashed it. And one of her jokes was about, how men will say getting kicked in the balls is just like the same pain as giving birth. And they're like, okay, did you shit yourself when you were getting kicked in the balls? Did a nurse appear from underneath, scoop the little baby and go, like a student nurse, just go and pop it away? Yeah. No.
Did you get a load of medical students examining your nunny? Can we just have a little look at that?
No, it is not the same pain. No. And it doesn't last for 42 hours. So
42 hours?
Yeah, her set was just brilliant. And
What's
I recommend it. Sophie McCormack, I think.
Okay. Well,
I feel like I need to. Yeah, honestly, she actually shared me on my, Sophie...
Although
McCartney, sorry, I don't want to get a name wrong.
To the people listening, if there's a choice, if you've got a limited number of female comedians you want to follow me. If you're like, I can only follow one female comedian who's shat herself whilst giving birth.
What's your Instagram name?
Oh, I'm at Uncle Siobhan. It's because of an email address I set up when I was 15. Okay. I should change it really, just like Siobhan Dodd, award-winning comedian. Or something wacky like that. But it's Siobhan Dodd at Uncle Siobhan. I would love more followers because I'm a bit new to Instagram really, and only since winning the award last year did I suddenly go, I better start doing Instagram. I prefer Facebook. I'm more of a Facebook girl. So yeah, this podcast journey has been amazing, and people got in touch with me and said, "Oh, Hayley Brown's also a podcaster." So then that's when I contacted you. And I've thought about you a lot, because actually it's quite hard, because compared to live comedy, when you're on stage, you get that feedback instantly. But with the podcast, you put it out there. And the first few episodes, people are like, oh, yeah, it's great. And then people just stop talking to you about it. I know they're listening because the numbers are going up, but you don't know what people are thinking. So when I thought, wow, Hayley's actually doing this on her own. Like, I've got co-hosts.
I'm not consistent enough, though. I need to be more consistent with what I'm producing. And that's been my biggest problem throughout the whole of Instagram, social media, being a creative. And why I'm thinking maybe I am ADHD, because I just can't seem to zone in to one thing. I just go, oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. Oh, I'm going to have so many. How do you do that? How do we like not niche ourselves, because I don't think I'll ever be niche, but
you've got it. It's fine. What you're doing is great. You've got an episode out every week, and you've got great guests on, and the concept really of inadequacy is a fantastic one. And I know all the guests have really enjoyed exploring it. I listened to the one with the spin justice lady. She was brilliant. Really enjoyed her.
And we're going out for we're going out. Like if anything, this is making my network grow. I'm connecting with so many women. I think with being creative, with being a mom, with being an interpreter, with being all these things that we are, I think it's just really good to stand firm in who you are and just not think that you're half of, a bit like what we were talking about with our ethnicity, like you're not half of something. You can be all of many things.
You can, and it's important to recognise, to give yourself time. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was really doing too many gigs. And I thought to myself, I need a week where I'm just a mum and an interpreter and not doing this. Like, sometimes it's about having that balance, isn't it? And trying to recognise when it's getting too much. And actually, about the podcast, like there was one week where Alex just went, I don't have time to edit this week. We're not putting one out. And I went, that's fine, because we're humans. And actually, we're not being held to account here. We're doing this mostly for ourselves. And yes, it will grow and it helps people, but it's, there's no boss. We're our own boss. And actually, you're doing an amazing job. And also on the circuit, I meet a load of freaks and weirdos every night who are doing the same thing, and we've got that solidarity. But there isn't necessarily that same network for podcasting. So that's why I always want to check in on you, check in how you're doing. Is the process driving you mad? Because there's been times it's driven me mad. So yes, it's really nice to connect, and we've got that bond now, Hayley.
Yeah, I think with podcasting, it's just important to remember to just be yourself, because ultimately they're going to come for some kind of, people are going to listen maybe because they like the look of a title, and they they might connect to your guest, but they will stay because of you. And if they're your vibe will attract your tribe, and that's what you want. If they're not coming back, then they're not your tribe, and it's just
people
about
who don't want to
consistent.
hear about poo.
Exactly.
So
you're going to collect.
I don't really like poo. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, my podcast is not for you.
I love that, honestly. Here's to women being authentically themselves and juggling motherhood, and just have an amazing time away where you're going to switch off, aren't you? And you're just going to be mum for a couple of weeks. Where are you going?
Oh yeah, we're going to Hong Kong actually. Amazing. Monday the 7th. Wow. Yeah, which again, it'll be nice connecting with, one's culture and heritage. It's going to be really nice to show the kids. Dave's uncle's out there. I think it's going to be really good. And I think we've all been doing so much. Like Dave had his Ofsted inspection. He did really well. That's why he was out on the piss last night. Well deserved. It's been quite full on. And school's full on for the kids, isn't it? School's a lot for them. Yeah.
Have you been to Hong Kong before?
We have. But doing like a 14-hour flight with 2 small children, I am concerned about that. I don't know how many films I'm going to get watching. I normally like to watch at least 3, but we'll see. Babe. I know. I'm like saying to Dave, I will still have the wine and the films, right? I will get to, won't I? I mean, it's not going to be the most relaxing holiday, I don't think. But it will be good to switch off from social media as well, because we need that time, don't we, to engage with the world around us.
Definitely, I'm going to try and do plenty of that this year. Yeah. But thank you so much for coming on to Inadequate Mother. Just to plug your podcast, Go on, plug your podcast so I get the name right.
The Following Through podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify, all of them, I think. The Following Through podcast. On YouTube, we're not as good as you. We don't have to have the translated versions all out on YouTube, but I have got some subtitled episodes. Not all of them yet, but I'm working on it. I'm sorry, not yet. But they're getting there. Sorry. They're getting there. I know. Just trying to judge it all. So please check out the Following Through podcast in all major platforms, and follow me on Instagram at Uncle Siobhan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this chinwag with me, and I will be going off to celebrate my daughter's birthday now. So not that I haven't got lots to do, but yeah, it's been amazing. I'm so glad we got to, and I'm sure we'll be back. We'll be back for another little. We'll have a more specific topic to cover, because I love talking to you, and I'm so glad we've connected.
Thank you for having me.